Good day and welcome to episode 25 of the Humble Pursuit podcast. I'm Bill and I'm joined in studio with Little Bill and Thomas and Tyler. All of you guys.
He's so proud of himself that he just learned my middle name after 17 years or whatever it is.
I think it's exciting. I had no idea when I named my son that in a dyslexic way I was naming him after you.
I thought it was a compliment, so
Did
thanks
you really?
for ruining that for me.
No,
so
it wasn't.
Thomas William, and your son is William
Thomas.
Yes.
Yeah, we had that conversation.
Did we really?
Oh, yeah. Because
I'll believe you.
Okay.
I'll believe you.
You should.
It is. Hey, we're coming to you from the new studio. It's almost done. We're getting closer by the day. Did our camera just turn on? It's going to work.
Back from minor technical difficulty.
Minor technical difficulties. We are back. We're in the new studio. It's set up so we just come in and hit record, maybe, and we'll see if it kind of works. There might be some stitching and editing. So anyway, we like to talk about community, brotherhood, manning up, embracing the suck of life, which I think we're going to talk about today, fatherhood, and we have a little bit of healthy back and forth jesting that may or may not go on.
A little bit.
Little bit. We try to keep it PG. So the topic for today is, how do you handle mistakes made by yourself or by those you love?
This is theoretical for us.
This is theoretical for me.
Happened.
not for me.
Not for Thomas, Little Bill. But we're from Kansas, for those of you tuning in, and so therefore we're all default Kansas City Chiefs fans, right?
Hoorah!
We should be.
Well, I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but I'll claim the Chiefs right now.
You should.
I'll claim the Chiefs. Anyway, there was an incident in the game, and I just want to do a quick recap of what happened. It's actually the first full football game I got to watch this year. And it's a heck of a game, but basically, you get down to 6 minutes to go. It's a tie ball game.
This is the AFC Championship.
AFC Championship, Kansas City Chiefs.
Winner goes to the Super Bowl.
Versus who?
The Bengals. Cincinnati.
Bengals.
It's not the Cleveland Bengals?
It's the Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh, okay. Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, you're a Steelers fan.
I'm a Steelers fan.
The Bengals are in your division, and you don't know what town they're from.
Dude, we just...
Okay, keep going.
I wave my towel. That's all I do. I just wave a towel. That's it. So 6 minutes to go. Kansas City gets the ball. They're going down for a game-winning drive. 7 plays later, they have to punt the ball. Game still tied 20-20. 2 minutes and 36 seconds to go. Who was it? The Bengals?
The Bengals.
The Bengals have the ball, and they're driving. I texted the group, and I was like, "What's your predictions, guys?" Tyler's didn't respond.
I was just tapping. I was a little nervous.
And Thomas, what did you say?
I said, I think we're in trouble.
Okay. Well, I thought we were in trouble too. But the defense holds, and Kansas City gets the ball back. They need to drive about 20 to 25 yards to get into field goal range. And they have one timeout and 38 seconds to go. First down, they get 6 yards. Second down, incomplete pass. Third down, Mahomes with only one leg, the only one-legged quarterback in the NFL, scrambles for 5 yards. Problem being, he goes about a yard out of bounds, and somebody pushes him from the defense, and his name is Joseph Asai. Pushes him out of bounds. Now, I encourage you to go watch the video, because Patrick Mahomes is an awesome athlete, and I think he's got a future career in the NBA, because he flopped at the end of that as well. He was hit.
He was.
He was pushed out of bounds, that's for sure. But the flop was pretty amazing. He sold it. He got 15 yards out of it. That gave them 26 yards. Next play, they kick a field goal. 3 seconds left to go. They kick off. Game's over. And then after the game,
the big thing, he pushes him out of bounds. He's out of bounds, pushes him. Big time penalty, right?
Oh,
that's kind of the point of the story is, if there wasn't a penalty, Mahomes, where he went out of bounds, it was a first down, but it was still going to be a 60-yard field goal from there.
Right.
You get 15 yards, 45, much more doable field goal. So this guy gives the Chiefs the field goal.
Correct. So then after the game's over, the camera's first shot is of Mahomes, and he's doing his celebration and having all kinds of good times. Then the next shot is of Osai over on a bench by himself, tears in his eyes, head in his hands over his head, and just is devastated. He made a mistake. And then afterwards in the tunnel, there was a gentleman by the name of Jermaine Pratt, and he had some not nice words to say about his teammate. We won't say any of those words here. And then there was an interview, and I think you saw the interview. I really didn't see that.
Yeah, just in the locker room, the cameras stayed on Osai because he lost the game. That's the kind of the narrative, is that this one mistake cost him the whole game, and he had all these reporters asking him questions, just making him feel even worse about the mistake. And his teammate comes up, BJ Hill, I believe.
Hill.
And stands kind of in front of the reporters and starts screening the questions. And if it's an asinine question, he just says, "Come on, you can do better than that," and totally defends him against these just throat dogs coming after him. And he was a defensive player. He had worked his whole game to put them in a place to win, and his teammate made a mistake, and he stood there next to him and not defended the play, but defended the guy.
Okay.
Well, and I think it stands too to note that Osai owned it too.
Immediately.
He was the first. I mean, it didn't make him feel better about it, but he was like, I was trying to make a play. The guys, you realize he spent his entire life up to that play to win that game, to get to the, and he makes one mistake, and he knew it, and he said it, and yet it wasn't enough to just let that stand and say, I made a mistake. It was the camera angle in his face the whole time. It was zooming in on his tears as he's crying. It's just trying to exploit that, which is what you got out of the broadcast.
And then you said that you went and looked at Twitter or something later, and what was the trending?
Yeah, I mean, Osai was the number 2 trending topic on Twitter.
And where was Patrick Mahomes on that list of top 10?
No Mahomes, no Burrow, no
Burrowhead Stadium, none of that?
Nope. It was, that was number 2 trending topic on the whole platform.
So that brings us back to the question is, how do you handle mistakes made by yourself or by those you love with a camera?
I think we found what doesn't work. Don't use a GoPro for a podcast.
This is not an advertisement for GoPro.
We'll just audio this out.
We'll just audio this out and we'll let it go. So, and there's different ones. There's mistakes at work like what this guy made. The one that I thought of originally was, those words or those actions that we have against the ones that we love that we immediately know we're wrong. And how do we handle that? So I'm going to throw that in the middle and somebody run with it.
Do we own it? I mean, like you said, that's how he reacted. He was not in the ref's face, mostly because he busted his knee on the play and probably couldn't get up. But he knew he made a mistake, and he was sorry for it, and he was apologetic. And that's not necessarily how I handle all my mistakes, especially if we're talking about at home, right? You want to defend yourself. Make sure your side of the story is told.
The right side of the story.
The right side.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great place to start this conversation, is just the ownership he had.
That is, because I can just think back to the last time that my wife and I got into a disagreement about something. I can't tell you what it was, but I can tell you that I screwed up. And rather than just say, "Hey, baby, I'm sorry," not that you're my wife.
That was
awkward. That was awkward.
Keep going.
But I didn't say, "Hey, baby, I'm sorry." I was like, "Hey, I was right. And I'm going to go ahead and punish you for that now."
Mm-hmm.
Could have been infuriating. I don't know. I've done that before.
Yeah. It's something that's come to head in my relationship, my marriage lately, is that we've, for a long time, had this thing of we would race to be the first. When there's a conflict, it'd almost be a challenge who can apologize first. And it was just healthy and helpful to genuinely want to be the first to say you're sorry. And I kind of gave that up for a little while and really wanted to make sure she knew that there's some on her side of the street that she needed to own first. And it's funny because since I've started going back towards that, wanting to apologize first, there's so much more freedom. That burden and bitterness in the disagreements, the first person to apologize gets to get rid of that first. That anger, that frustration. Maybe it's not completely resolved at that point, but that mental block that can happen where you're replaying what happened and stuff. I mean, I think that's one of the gifts God gave us in commanding or telling us to confess your sins, to apologize, to reconcile, is the gift we get back when we own our mistakes.
Yeah, and I go to, for whatever reason, I go to this idea that you're like a victim. Like, I can't believe this is happening. Like, of course this is happening to me right now in the middle of everything that's going on. He could have said, of course, that has to happen to me. Like, I have to be the one to make that play and cost our team. Or I look at my relationships, everything else is, I'm having struggles in these areas, and of course this has to happen now. Instead of that ownership idea of, well, I'm consciously making choices that are putting me in these positions, I tend to fall back to that. I have so much going on. I can't believe this is happening to me. And I just think that takes away from that whole ownership part. I mean, like Jocko's book, extreme ownership. I mean, that there's always a place you can say that you had some input into the problem that you had or the mistake that you made. You put yourself in that position, and I think starting there allows you to get to the point where where you can accept the fact that, okay, I need to accept that. I need to be forgiven for it and move on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it was, I don't know, you look at a game like that and the highlight reels, these great catches, great throws. But I'm glad that this game, and it probably happens a lot and it just goes over my head, but there's a highlight reel of brotherhood too, about BJ in the locker room, but just being able to show what brotherhood looks like. He BJ maybe made mistakes. The guy who consoled his teammate, he probably made mistakes during that game, missed some tackles, and he was able to move beyond his mistakes, his friend's mistakes, and just look at the person. And I think that's a highlight that's worth bringing up and praising. So it's weird to have a bunch of Chiefs fans praising the Bengals. I think there's some neat stuff in the locker room. I also saw in the interview afterwards, the coaches were asked about the refs. I mean, there's a lot of questions about the refs. He didn't blame it on the refs.
He was so classy. Yeah. I thought in that post-game conference he stood there and told every guy on that team that he loved them, told every guy on that team that they played hard. I mean, he had their backs as much as his teammate did in the interview. But when he got pushed, and of course they want him pushed into that, well, we would have won the game if it hadn't been for the officials. I mean, there were some terrible calls that went against them.
How many downs do you get per series? Five?
Only in the fourth quarter.
Oh, in the fourth quarter you get 5
But
downs.
his response, especially right after that, he was obviously very emotional, and everybody was, and he was able to stand up and say, I support my guys. I support what they've done. I believe in them. And I just thought, he didn't buy into that whole narrative of this got stolen from us. And that's a whole nother place we could go with this conversation is when you take ownership for that and say, we weren't in the right place to succeed, we made bad choices, then all of a sudden it's not, well, the game was rigged against us and there was nothing we could do. Because then you start that, well, then all of a sudden it's not your fault because the system was against you. I mean, so Asai was the number 2 trending topic. And I think it was in the top 10. It was hashtag NFL rigged. It was. Because both championship games were, that the calls were unfair, that this went against my team, and they wanted the Eagles in the Super Bowl. And they wanted Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl.
Absolutely they did.
Well, then, therefore, there's no ownership from the fact that my team didn't play well enough to win. I mean, because that's where we've all become I mean, I don't want to talk about politics,
No.
but that's what so much of this has become is, well, it wasn't my fault that these bad things happened. It was the system. It was something that is nameless. And I'm the victim of that system. And that's why this didn't work out for me. And I just think that's a dangerous place to take things.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree that there's a lot of blaming the system. And, you know, we do hear in Scripture that we battle against not flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. But we think if we change this system and put this system in, then it's all going to be good. Or this corrupt system can be repaired. But I think we've got to accept it's all broken. And it starts with us as individuals. And so if we're, as individuals, broken, we're going to create broken systems. And so where do we come back to that word of ownership, almost on our side of the street, and take personal responsibility?
So what's our example of that? And like we said before, you know, in Jesus' day, did he try to reform the Roman government? You know, was his mission to go to the government and change that to better, you know, to elevate Christians or to elevate people who were persecuted? He had no interest in that. The system was rigged, so to speak, 2,000 years ago too. His interest was in the individual. His interest was in your heart. What are the things that you can own, that you can change? You extend love. You love God. You love your neighbor. You do these things. It wasn't, I'm going to go change the system so you can all be in a better place. I mean, that wasn't his narrative either. But that's what we've adopted now is it's not our fault now. So we got to go change it at a different level so we can make better choices. It's up to us.
Yeah, a new commandment I give to you, to love one another. And with all of those others, everything else is done. Mm-hmm. You know, and as you talked about the confession and victimhood and stuff like that, you know, that love one another, that's powerful. You know, bringing it back to a personal level, you know, I know my wife is forgetful. My daughter is forgetful. Or one of my daughters, probably multiples of my daughters are forgetful. And they leave their keys locked in their car. I carry all the keys that we own, a spare set with me at all times because this is a regular event. And, you know, the first couple of times it happens, it's, oh, that's so cute. Keys. That's so cute. I love that about you. That's such a neat little, to, you know, the 30th time it happens, it is, you know, berating. It is, this is so inconvenient for me right now. I hope you know that this is really inconvenient. I have to drive 30 miles to unlock your car is very inconvenient for me. And I want you to know how inconvenient it is. The absolute opposite of love one another. And somebody makes a mistake, you know, man, I'm kind of guilty as Mr. Pratt sometimes.
And it's interesting that Pratt, you know, later realized the error of his ways, the guy who berated him in the tunnel on the way in, and he did apologize.
Yes.
So both of them know what was right and wrong, Pratt and B.J. Hill, the two teammates. But one guy responded in love immediately, another guy, it took a little while. So what do we need to do as dads and husbands, coworkers, employers, that our reaction is love and not, all right, after I get cooled down, and then I choose love? You guys got some answers for me? How I can react?
For me,
that pre-decision?
The answer I need to have is to shut my mouth, you know, especially when I feel emotions coming on. I need to shut my mouth and process it through the proper lens, because first thought, second thought, third thought may all be wrong, you know, until I get to what is the right thought. And I can choose to react in love. It boils down to a choice. We have a choice in those moments. And the convenient choice, the worldly choice, the easy choice is to reach out in anger and show our frustration. And
because nobody blames you for that.
Oh, absolutely,
you know, because that's everybody. I mean, that's everybody's response. It is. I mean, until you start to change what's inside of you, that's your response, and that's what. it's just incredibly difficult to change that from the beginning, like you said. To have that be your reflex is not to go there, and certainly not mine. But to me, it comes back to what's your perspective, and if you're living every day for the things, the breadcrumbs, the things that are right in front of you, it's difficult. It's difficult to have that. Okay, I need to respond this way first because all you can see is what's right in front of you. But if you change your perspective and you pull out to that 30,000 foot and you see your whole life in terms of how you fit in it and where God is and where everybody else is, I think it becomes easier to say, well, in this respect, I'm not. She locked her keys in her car. That doesn't change our life at all. And it's different. But when you're right in the middle of it every day, this is incredibly inconvenient. I have a lot of things going on today.
Right?
How could you be so inconsiderate? But when you're out here and you look at it, it's easy when you're not emotional to say, this stuff doesn't really matter. I mean, we had a conversation. It was before the game. We were talking about some sports with my boys. And it was the whole conversation about there is no game that's more important than your life. And that was part of my story, as I've explained before, that, okay, I can't play football anymore, but I'm alive. So that's an easier discussion than if I had never had that injury. And if you just told me I couldn't play, I would have taken that really hard. And I told them, so that's high school football. It's college football. It's professional football. And even Jack made the comment, he said, well, Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls. And I said, and that whole body of work is still not more important than Tom Brady's life. And that's not how we and the media and all of that reacts. That is number one. It's not number one. But if we can see it that way, then these decisions get a little bit easier. Those reflexes get easier to say, in light of my entire life and how I fit in it, I know how I should respond to it. It's just hard to do.
And then, there's another aspect to that as well, or that complements that as well, and that is if we're allowing the Holy Spirit to flow through us. If we're allowing the Holy Spirit, if we're truly reaching for that. Our human reactions are flawed. The Holy Spirit's reactions are not. This camera is flawed. It's very flawed.
I have no idea what it's.
So, because the fruits of the Spirit are joy, love, peace, and all of that the Holy Spirit is just sitting there waiting to give to you. Just holding them in front of you saying, take these. Take this joy. Take this love. Take this peace. And we have to open our hands and take that and accept that.
Well,
on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, on a minute-by-minute basis.
Well, I sat here a week ago and listened to you two tell me that the hardest person to extend grace to is yourself. And so when you do that and when you consider that, you have to know that this is work to do these. I mean, this is not, I don't know anybody, have never met anybody who just freely walks around and is led by the Spirit all the time. And is just, hey, my life is easy because I never lose context, because I always know my place in it. And so, I mean, I've never met anybody like that. I don't think there's ever been, say, one person that's ever lived that way. And so for us to sit here and talk about how to handle mistakes in an environment where we're not emotional and we haven't just made a bunch of mistakes is one thing. But when you're in the heat of it and doing it, I think we have to accept and give ourselves grace to say, well, this is, how could we be equipped to just handle this correctly every time? We can't do that.
We can't, and we won't handle it correctly. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from seeing this on national TV to seeing it play out in replays to seeing it play out on Twitter is we're all going to make mistakes. And owning your mistake is huge. Being with a brother and being by his side is huge. There's a high likelihood that I will make a parenting mistake today. There's a high likelihood that that's going to happen. And that I have brothers that I can go to, that I can own that, is a far better choice than me thinking that I'm different and that I'm just a screw up. and that, Thomas is a better father than me, or that Tyler is more timely than me, or something like that. That's just wrong.
That is wrong. You're right.
That's wrong. Yeah, I think we did get a chance to see on national television, two people got highlighted. We're highlighting two people, somebody B-rating and someone defending. There's, I don't know what's the size of a team, there's 50-some players that we didn't hear anything about, right? We want to be that one player that's defending, not accuse people and throw stones and get them when they're down, but we actually want to step in and defend people. We don't defend their actions, right? When we see our friends, our brothers that we do life with make mistakes, we don't defend it, but we defend their identity and help them remember who they are, remind them of what they have done and what God's going to do through their life. So there we go. I will never throw a football like Patrick Mahomes, but I sure hope I can stand up for one of you guys and you'll stand up for me like BJ Hill did.
Yeah, I just that image of those two guys in that locker room where you look at this guy who, doesn't need anybody. I mean, the guy's in the NFL. He is a physical specimen. He is on top of his life to so many people, and he was just humbled to a point, and had another guy stand right beside him and propped him up. And I mean, what a great just image, to have that. I mean, even when you're not on top, you need that guy. I mean, you need that guy to stand beside you and filter questions, or stand beside you and say, hey, I'm on this team with him. We're in this trench together. And then the coach on top of that to come in and just reaffirm on top of that and say, I have everybody on this team's back because these guys, work and sweat and bleed for me, and we have a culture here, and that makes that team dangerous as a Chiefs fan because there's something in that culture of that team. I mean, they're going to be back where they are because, yeah, they're good football players, but look at that. I mean, they have it seems like they have such a solid core and culture on that team. I was impressed with that.
It was funny. The coach was also asked a question. Your punter punted it in a prime spot for them to have the Chiefs got a good return. Was he supposed to do a directional punt and keep it away? Mm-hmm. And he said, we'll address that on Monday. And so he's not oblivious. He's not like, mistakes are made and it doesn't really matter.
Well, and that kick went to Sky Moore, who's had how many turnovers for that team over the course of the year, to the point that he got benched. And then for him to get that punt and put them in that position, I mean, that's a redemption story. Or Butker making that kick when he had all those struggles a couple weeks ago. So there's all these other stories that come out of it. But the number 2 topic on Twitter was Joseph Asai, because that was the negative, easy to pile on guy at the moment. It wasn't all these other things that were accomplished. It's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, sum it up for us, Tyler.
Well,
what did we learn today?
Don't trust your first reaction. Because even my first reaction at that, when I saw that, was he got hurt and Mahomes we got what we wanted, and it wasn't grace towards him or compassion. It was, we got what we wanted. So just understanding that first reaction in almost all these regards, the path of least resistance, that first emotion, you got to recognize it and then analyze, who do I want to be? Do I want that first emotion to drive how I act, or do I stand for something bigger? How do I take that tougher road and forgive the mistakes our friends, wife, children make? I think there's a rich life on the other side of that. I think BJ Hill went home in a better place than a guy who was bitter against his brother. I mean, there's a good life.
Which is interesting. He went home. He's not going to the Super Bowl, but he went home in a better place.
Yeah,
that's hard to.
Well,
I agree, but that's not normal. Like that, the response is, well, he's in a worse place because he lost the game and is not going to the Super Bowl. But look at what he stood for. Look at the impact that he made on us and millions of people because of his action. If he would have went to the Super Bowl, I'd have no idea who that guy was. I wouldn't know him.
Right.
but he'd be in the Super Bowl. So it's that perspective.
And I think one of the things, and I think, Thomas, you spoke to this in maybe a roundabout way or something else, is at the end of the day, that was just a game. It was a game that presented an opportunity for a brother to stand up for a man to take ownership for his actions, and ultimately for a man to show not necessarily the best reaction. It was just a game. It was less than 15 seconds. The whole thing, the play, the fits afterwards, the apology, 15 seconds. What we're talking about with B.J. Hill and with him taking his ownership, those are all eternal consequences. Those are things that last forever. So many times we get caught on the minuscule and let that, let 10 seconds ruin an entire day, ruin an entire month, ruin an entire year, ruin an entire marriage for 10 seconds.
Mm-mm.
These guys, they had eternal consequences in a positive direction because of that day.
Yeah, you said zoom out and get the big perspective, right? It's easier to choose love. I mean, eternal is a pretty big perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would say, to kind of sum that up too, is ownership and all the things we've discussed, but also when you have those opportunities, when that became a time where you have a lot of chance to impact somebody. So you make a mistake, or someone you love makes a mistake, you have a choice at that point of, are you going to accept that? Or you can make more life changes when you make mistakes and when you have failures because of the conversation we're having right now, or you can just pile on. You can add it to the fire, and so when these things happen, what's the saying? You don't let a good crisis go to waste. It's like, when you have a disaster or even just a bad choice or whatever it might be, it presents you an opportunity almost immediately to show what you stand for, to stand beside somebody else, or to take that ownership of that. That produces to something. I mean, that gives you the opportunity to elevate yourself and your relationship to a different place. Is why I said that's why I think that team is concerning to me as a Chiefs fan, because they went through something that a lot of other teams have, maybe they haven't had the chance to have those discussions but their relationships are probably in a better place than they were before. That has long-term consequences.
Yeah, and I think, there's a saying, and it's probably not this, but it's something of that nature, is our faith is refined in the trenches, not on the mountaintops, and that their faith in each other as brothers is refined in those moments, not celebrating on the field after a victory.
That's true.
All right. Any closing thoughts?
You got it.
That was my closing thought.
Okay. That was a wonderful thought for closing. We'll try to get our technical difficulties figured out. I'm not going to blame anybody for the camera issue.
Well, this is only, 4 in a row?
Extreme ownership.
Extreme
That's right.
ownership.
That's my camera.
I'm not going to berate anybody. No, we're not.
Extreme
Because
ownership.
you also bought us lunch.
Oh, yeah. This podcast is sponsored by
Tyler Lund.
until JourneyWorks pays for it, because JourneyWorks, that's our sponsor. If
Why do you
need
keep
painting-
looking at the camera? There's no camera
There's
there.
a blinking red light, and there's
a possibility that there's
It's
hope over
distracting.
there.
on the other side that this is recording.
Okay.
Unlikely, but so
Journey works.
you need painting done. You hate drywall. You need a little light construction done. You call JourneyWorks. We got Joe Lewis come and set you right. So 785. Oh crud.
536
536-0123.
Is it really?
I got your back. Yeah.
0123.
That's a cool number.
JourneyWorks.
785-536-0123.
Don't Google us, because I have not figured out our search engine optimization, but journey-works.com.
Nice.
Yeah. There you go.
So that's our official sponsor. It's not Tyler Lund.
No.
But we can figure out a way to reverse that invoice and make him pay for lunch any which way.
Loop it back.
Loop it back. We'll circle back to that. And our unofficial sponsor is Primal Jerky. Bo, if you're listening to this, I never received the package of the new meat sticks that you promised me that I would receive before you guys went and traveled. Oh, they went to SHOT Show. Bo went to the Kansas City Chiefs football game, all without sending us meat sticks. So I usually have a long plug for them. I'll still say it's the best beef jerky I've ever had, and it's probably the best beef jerky on the planet. And if you eat it, you will automatically be a world-class arm wrestler. Those are all things that I will say, but I'm not happy with them right now. So I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it like that. But if you want to check out Primal Jerky, you can go to @PrimalJerky on Facebook, or they have a website, www.feedonprimal.com. We also have internet presence. We have Facebook, Twitter. I'm learning to tweet. I'm doing better at tweeting. What else do we have? Facebook, Twitter. We don't have Instagram.
You can go to YouTube and watch a blank screen.
We have a
talk,
YouTube page that The Humble Pursuit is the YouTube page, and yeah, it'll be a blank screen with a blinking light, possibly.
We'll do something funny.
Yeah, you're going to have some creative editing, and they won't be able to see your Chiefs hat.
Oh, yes.
That's a waste of a good crisis.
I'll take
right there. Right there. Well, remember, never settle, never give up. Live life with urgency to the fullest and in abundance. Face your legacy every day. The only day guaranteed is yesterday. For Little Bill, Tyler, and myself, God bless. We're out.